have these sort of separations? Can I combine in financial information and do other pieces to it? And then also, thinking about this as a real-time system or a near real-time system, you can support, day-to-day operational issues, such as if there is a rare event within the hospital or within the delivery system, ask, are there other patients in the delivery system now which are similar to this? So you can start to do, an analysis on those events, but also perhaps maybe do some remediation and do that one. And one of the other ones which is sort of key is when you think about cohort analysis, you think about supporting patients for clinical trials. So all of these really are sort of tied up in what we are calling operational analytics, which feeds between these two pieces of it. And that's, so when we started to think about the requirements of that, being able to search for patients based on clinical information, having some sort of similarity calculation, being able to support the loading of this data near real time so that you can support operationals, really sort of operational things. It's really sort of sounded a lot like an MDM solution with some analytics and some analysis built into it, but an MDM solution that's keeping track of some sort of clinical data that supports these operationals. And that's what we want to sort of talk about here. One of the so again, getting back to it, it's really something to support cohort selection use cases if you want to do it. And there's a number of reasons in addition to, for doing this. One is for analysis. Similar patients, what were the outcomes, what were the events? Can you start to use this to break apart your population, try to understand what you're doing and what you're doing now with a set of patients? And then again, to find people for clinical trials. That's all based really on a set of search criteria that I want to be able to go against a longitudinal patient record. I'll build this up over time so then I can search for patients and I can search for them for different purposes. But again, based upon sort of real-time loading of the data. And that's what we're doing, and we're calling it a clinical hub, and we'll probably rename it 4 or 5 times before we finally get it out there, is our way. But what we've done is we've taken our MDM solution, which you're all familiar with as managing patient demographic information or provider demographic information, and we've extended that in a way where we can store in there a longitudinal patient record based upon clinical data. Now, as you all know, that sounds a lot easier than it really is in practice, and we'll discuss some of the issues that drive us, that give us some problems there and some of our solutions with it. But the key piece of this is an MDM solution that's managing some set of clinical data, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that is. And then the second piece of it is I think, some capabilities that we have found from IBM Research, who have been really working in the health informatics area for a number of years, and some of the capabilities that we're taking from the research folks are algorithms that match patients based upon clinical data to find similar ones. And we'll talk a little bit about how that plays through in being able to do searching. Just as now when you search on an EMPI for a particular name, or based on a particular set of demographics information, we bring back things that are close to that. Same thing is the case here using these algorithms, so you can bring back things that are not just exact matches. So the key thing with that is when we talked about this, we wanted this to be similar to an MDM in a real-time operational setup. And that really meant that what we had to do was to get as much information, clinical information, on the patients that we could via the existing message infrastructure that's in place. So reports, diagnostics information, lab system reports, orders, etc., get fed into this, and we parse those in the same way we handle HL7 ADT messages now. Although, now you've got to do a little bit more work. There's doctor's notes in those. If you've all looked at HL7 messages, there's a rich set of information in there. And it tends to be in different code sets, so there's some normalization there. One of the other key things that we wanted to do with this product is to be able to have a system that the IT staff could give to the researchers and give to the informaticians and the clinicians that they could do self-service searching. Right now, if you're doing if I'm going to go look for, say, a set of clinical trials, and I'll use that throughout the discussion, throughout the presentation as sort of the canonical case, what happens is a researcher writes down a set of things for a query. He hands it to the IT department. They execute the query. They give him back. He says, oh, that's not quite right. He modifies that, sends that back to the IT department. They do the query, and it goes back and forth. Well, that takes a lot of IT resources. That takes a lot of IT time. That's not very efficient for the researchers. So one of the requirements for this product was to create this in a way that it could be self-service. And the thing that supports that is one of the reasons you don't want them mucking around in your data warehouse is that there's a lot of information that you wouldn't want your researchers to see, the demographic information, et cetera. So this clinical hub, this separate model, is a de-identified model. And to be honest, to be clear on it, it's a HIPAA limited data set that we have in there. So you can allow researchers to have access to it, but it's linked over to the EMPI where all of the demographic information and the identifiable information is kept. So you can allow physicians and you can allow researchers to do self-service queries upon this and then speed up the results of doing clinical trials. And the one application that we have built on top of this is, in fact, something that allows you to search for patients based upon, cohort selections. They, again, kind of aimed at clinical trials or finding patients for clinical trials, but it can be really used in general for searching from that thing. And I think I've covered pretty much the key benefits there. It's really to